From its early introduction to Europe in the 1980s, house music hit the streets and clubs of Manchester. It created a new generation of clubbers and rave culture was born. A generation of carefree clubbers who danced until sunrise every weekend. This rave culture has now made a comeback in the last few years. More and more nights are advertised every week which are trying to recreate the atmosphere of the rave scene 20 years ago. House Revival will take you on a journey showing you where it all began and also what Manchester's influence has been on the house music scene.
There is lots and lots more events. I mean, from down south to the north, the whole rave culture seems to be back in a big way, in a huge way, if I'm honest. The Hacienda was the epitome of house music. It's as simple as that. What happened with that club was amazing. It started off as funk, you know, with the Madonnas and loads of little funk tunes, but then they mixed them kind of tunes in with the 4/4 house tunes. You know, I mean, we were talking again, yet like I said, the Mr. Fingers is, the Adonis is, all them early acid trap sort of tunes. And then it escalated into the Voodoo Rays and things like that. And then Manchester became huge, as we know anyway. You know, 8-Way Stay, etc., which was just amazing. You know, and it helped with me with Mix Factory as well, because I was playing downstairs hip hop in Hacienda. They was all playing upstairs. Then you got the 8-Way Stay DJs who was on Sunset Radio. Sunset Radio. Then we got our own shows, Mix Factory on Sunset Radio, playing house music again. So whether it be Detroit house music, Belgium house music, you know, like the Frank DeWolfs and all the, you know, the techno tunes. That's where we came from, which then became full-on tech house, you know, techno house. So it got split into loads of different genres, but it was all house at the end of the day.
Hacienda's influence on Manchester and the whole world has been incredible and unquantifiable. I think it's been such a huge influence on house music alone, but on the city of Manchester. It attracted a huge amount of young people to the city, which at the time when the Hacienda was going was a derelict, forsaken city which didn't have a lot going for it. Hacienda came along and changed all that. Madonna playing at Hacienda, all these people who wanted to be in Hacienda, you go in Hacienda and see all these stars. It was kids from Winningshaw, Longsight, Wilmslow, you know, every kind of social background together in one place for the first time, just for the music, and it was all about music, nothing else. Nobody cared what you looked like, where you came from, you know, what your background was. It was all about the music, and that was the first time I'd ever experienced that, and a lot of other people had experienced that, and it was such a unifying thing for the city that it's left its mark forever.
The Hacienda was a massive influence in the UK dance music and the house music scene, so obviously it had that reputation nationally and internationally. And then obviously I think places like Sankey's have taken that mantle on, and Warehouse Project, where they've got world-renowned DJs, people like Sasha and Danny Tenaglia, and some of the biggest names in the dance music scene, the house music scene around the world. Have headlined and guested at those sort of venues. So Manchester's definitely a hub for quality house music, and obviously there's a reputation there, not just the underground house, but there's a big there was a big push towards a vocal house scene, like a girly sort of funky house around sort of 8-10 years ago, with a lot of the sort of glamour, the sort of glamour house clubs that started popping up north, Too Risque at North, there was Venus, which is still going. Lots of different places that were running, doing very similar sort of nights, similar sort of music, that sort of vocal, uplifting house music. So definitely Manchester has always had a good quality scene in that respect, I think.
Well, when I started, it was the early 80s, before there was house music, soul and funk, hip-hop came, well, hip-hop was there, but it sort of made its bigger mark in the mid-80s. And then I was doing DJ work, club-wise, and eventually I ended up on Piccadilly Radio in July of 86. And that was really the time where house music was a new style of music, really, you know, in its bigger form, with imports from Chicago and New York and stuff. No one really knew what they were, but a lot of people liked it.
It wasn't. It took many years for the education in dance music, the history of dance music, to get written down, and there's many distortions in it. And I still don't think there's a definitive history of it that I would agree with. So everyone's got their own point of view, you know, everyone's got, depending on what town they grew up in. I can say from a Manchester point of view that American dance music had been established, it was being played in Manchester, you know, way back in the late 70s and into the 80s, and it was a gradual thing, you know. Those house music records, you know, there was records around that you didn't have a title for it. Everything there was an explosion of genres once you hit the 90s of like this kind of dance music, this kind of house music, and all these different genres that was just overwhelming for us.
We're talking original house music here, going way back. I know it started in, you know, the gay clubs within America back in the early 80s, the late 70s, early 80s. It just, you know, it was that 4/4 beat with the little funk element, the old chic element and things like that with it. And it, you know, it escalated into the Adonises and, you know, the people from there. It was just acid, and then the acid sort of movement changed to the rave culture of the acid raves. And then obviously the big hands in the air anthem sort of breakdowns came within the whole house music genre, which was great, and it's never stopped. House music has never stopped.
House music is back in a big way.
The big anthem-y, hands in the air culture's back, where people like to enjoy themselves and like to, you know, have fun. The fun element's back.
I think there's a few reasons house music's coming back. I think the main reason is because it's blown up in America. America, since its advent in America, in Chicago, 20 years ago plus, America's never really got it. They've had it in small pockets of dedicated house heads, but it's never been the mainstream like it has in basically the rest of the world, you know, from Asia, all over Europe, Africa, whatever country in the world's got house music since its inception. Apart from America, which ironically invented it. Now America's got it big time. I noticed a couple of years ago, I used to go over there and DJ at a few different clubs, and I always kind of got the feeling that everybody in there didn't want house music, they all wanted R&B or hip hop, and they were just listening to what I played just by default.
I don't think the music's as good as it used to be. You know, over the last few years, you know, a lot of people are making music, the quality's not as good, the production's not as good, and I think people are going back to the old stuff. And classics are classics, so that, you know, people will always play them.